Marilynn Preston. If you've ever been to Israel or plan to go, you know it's really important that you get a wonderful guide. Well, today we have a wonderful guide, one of the premier tour guides from Israel. And his name is Walter Zangler. He is smart, he's enthusiastic, he's knowledgeable. I think you'll really enjoy meeting him. Walter, welcome.
Thank you.
Tell us, what brings you to the States?
There is an exhibition now in New York at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And this exhibition is of archaeology, which has come from the Israel Museum in Jerusalem. Now, when they decided to make the exhibition, then the Israel Government Film Service decided to make a film about it. And they knew that I had some experience making films about archaeological places, and so they asked me to make it.
Right. Now, this exhibit is called Treasures of the Holy Land. It's been written up quite a bit. Is it as wonderful as they say?
The things in the exhibition are wonderful, and they're also very important. Through the exhibition, one finds evidence of the whole development of human consciousness. Since in Israel, the archaeology starts with Neolithic Jericho, and that's 8,000 before the Common Era. And the exhibition starts back then and goes fairly continuously until the 5th or 6th century of the Common Era. So the pieces themselves are wonderful, but what they tell you, if you know how to read them, is even more wonderful, because you're following the whole history of mankind in one small exhibition.
Well, you clearly are someone who knows how to read the pieces. Unfortunately, we don't have any of them here today, but can you, through what you do so well, which is kind of evoke the nature and the spirits of the pieces, tell us about some of the highlights of the exhibit.
A piece that moved me, which I was surprised at, was when I was making the film. And there's a mask, and the mask is Neolithic Jericho. And I remember the cameraman just said, "Walter, put it on your face." It wasn't planned. And I picked up the mask, and I put it on my face, and I looked out through the eye holes. And it scared the life out of me, because I saw myself in the lens of the camera, which was only 4 feet away, and I looked, and I saw, and I knew it was me, but it was a different face.
And did you feel different wearing it?
Magic, that old 10,000-year-old magic still works, and I was trembling. Now, if you look at that, a wonderful Philistine cultic stand, a thing that stands 3 feet off the floor, and it's got figures in it of musicians. And one guy's leaning out the window playing a horn of some kind, and another one is banging cymbals, and another one is playing some kind of a flute.
Now, it's a stand used for what, originally?
Apparently, you made a fire inside of it, because it's quite hollow and quite open, a small fire, and then you put incense bowl on top of it, and it would burn incense. It's
sort of unfair to talk about an exhibit that unfortunately we won't be able to see here in Chicago. But actually we do see you, Walter, here in Chicago. You are on a very popular show called Hello, Jerusalem. And now you've been on the show weekly, week after week, for a number of years. What is it that you do on the show?
I'm the one who takes them to old places. They've got all of this wonderful archaeology in Israel, and although I'm not a professional archaeologist myself, I'm the one who goes to these places and tries to make them live, and tries to show why they're so special and what there was to see there, and how understanding the place helps us to understand the land of Israel in general, and the history of the Jewish people and other peoples in particular. That's how I got to the museum film, because that's stuff I've been doing for 5 years now on Hello, Jerusalem.
The museum film, by the way, we should say, will air on public television. It's a...
I know that it's signed up for PBS in New York, I know, on the 30th of December. What happens when I suppose it'll be here soon afterwards.
Public television has a way of recycling, and so
well, once it starts one places, and the other places naturally pick them up, I suppose.
Well, for those of us who can't get to the exhibit, it'll be a good thing. I want to go back to Hello, Jerusalem, and show people an example of the kind of work you do on that show. You have a wonderful sort of enthusiasm for the object and for the site. You really have a way of bringing it to life. Let's take a look at Walter. Before we do, set us up. The first one is a site just beneath the Cardo.
The main street of Jerusalem, pieces of which have now been rebuilt, was the old Cardo Maximus, built first by the Romans and then by the Byzantines. At the south end of the corridor, it started at Damascus Gate and went all the way south to the wall. At the south end of the corridor was a famous church.
Okay.
The church was called the Nea Church, and we knew about it because of an ancient map and because of ancient books. And the church, they found, there are pieces of it you can see today in Jerusalem, but the entrance to the church is under the parking lot, and the vaults under an incompleted theater which are closed to the public. So that I found, and I found it for the camera, and that's the program that you'll see.
Oh, terrific. Let's take a look.
Cardo. The very name means heart. And right through the heart of the old city of Jerusalem, the main street, the Cardo Maximus, is right under my feet. It's the street whose noises I hear below me, whose spices I smell. It's the street which begins at Damascus Gate. The old city of Jerusalem is, of course, enclosed by a wall. Now, where you have walls, you must have gates. Otherwise, you can't get in and out, obviously. There are 8 gates in the old city these days. Not all of them were defensible. At least 2 gates are just holes in the wall, which means that at the time and the place they were built, people weren't worried about security. But when you come to Damascus Gate, right in the middle of the vulnerable spot on the north wall, then we find a gate which is very well defended indeed. Before you get close, there are balconies to throw down stones, slits for boiling oil, and holes to shoot out of. Look at the gate itself, the great door, which closed as recently as 1967. The gate where you walk in, and then you've got to turn, zig, and there's another door, and then turn again, zag. Those 2 gates are gone now, but you can see the places where they were, which means that even now with all the gates wide open, you can't get a horse in here at more than a very slow walk. Damascus Gate was very well defended indeed. It would have been very difficult for the enemy to get in, and in fact, he never did. Not only is Damascus Gate the most complicated gate of Jerusalem, it is the oldest gate of the city by far. For here, underneath the present Damascus Gate, archaeologists have located, cleaned out, and restored the Roman gate to Jerusalem. Somewhere from the year 130, 135 of the Common Era, when this gate was first built. And the archaeology is even more complicated because there's Herodian stuff underneath, and it's already clear that this gate, as it stands, is put into a wall which is older than it, and that the gate itself is not an integral part of the wall. What we can do now, since it's been cleared out, is to walk into the Roman gatehouse of the 2nd century of the Common Era, and having walked into the Roman gate, can go up the stairs from that period and out onto the roof of the gate. Come. Now we've come up the Roman staircase, onto the roof of Damascus Gate. And from here, we can start to say something about the geography of the gate and about its name. If we look to the north, outside the walls of Jerusalem, we see that there's a great road going up, away from the city. For the Christians, this gate was called Damascus Gate. The Jews call it Sha'ar Shechem, Nablus Gate. And in both cases, because the great North Trunk Road goes from here to the north. The Muslims have a different name, but to understand that, we turn 180 degrees and look into the town. What do we see? A plaza, being built now and repaired. But this plaza has been there perhaps as long as there's been a gate. In this plaza was a pillar, and the Muslims still call this gate Bab al-Amud, the gate of the pillar.
It's wonderful to see that kind of undiscovered parts of Israel. How can someone best discover Israel? Let's talk about the person who's going there for the very first time, Walter. How can they prepare themselves?
To prepare oneself depends on how much energy and how much ambition you have. There are wonderful books. Libraries are full of books about Israel. And as a general rule, Israel is the one country which the more you read and the more you study and the more you're prepared in advance, the better off you are.
Do you find, now you are a tour guide there, you take people out all the time, do people tend to come there prepared? Or do you have to do all their homework?
I travel with a great many people. I travel with Anglican bishops, and I travel with ordinary
housewives,
people, Jews and Christians.
Do they even know what to ask, or do they just tend to be so overwhelmed by what they're seeing?
Some know what to ask. Some know what to ask. People who study know what they're looking at. But if one assumes, the best of the intelligence of the people with whom you're traveling, then you try to show people things which are interesting and try to make some sense out of it all. And if the people don't know the first day or the second, by the third day they already know if I'm doing my job right.
Part of your job, I guess, is really for a lot of these people, this is a pilgrimage. They're coming back and they are kind of spiritually naked in a way they may not ever have been. It puts a big burden on you, doesn't it?
Traveling to Israel is, I think, different from traveling to any other country in the world. You can go to Greece or to England and France and see wonderful things. But when you talk spiritually and religiously, the things you've been learning about since you were a kid in Sunday school, for Jews and for Christians, it's pilgrimage. And if they change in emphasis one to the other, they don't change in emotional content. Now, that for the guides, for us in general, is a serious problem, and we deal with it seriously. The people are here on what may be the most important thing they ever did in their life. And you have to deal with it, and you have to respect that, and you have to try. It's actually easier than it looks, because it's such a great country, and it's full of such great things, that you mostly have to avoid messing it up.
I know, and we have another piece of tape from Hello Jerusalem where you show us another wonderful thing.
From a hilltop just south of Jerusalem, the city is at our feet. A view of astonishing beauty, but also one of great interest. We know the old city inside the walls, but the oldest part of Jerusalem, Jerusalem of the city of David, Jerusalem in the days of Jesus, was on a small ridge south of the city outside the present old city walls. This small cluster of houses outside the old city is the oldest part of the old city. They built it on this hill because here at the bottom of the valley is the only place in Jerusalem where there is water. The place is called Gihon, and it's famous in the Bible. Solomon was crowned king here at Gihon. Here is the place where Jerusalem's water system begins. The trouble is that it's here, outside of town, and the city walls are 100 meters above me up the hill. Now that's okay in times of peace, you can come out of the city and drink. But in times of war, we're sitting inside the town, and the enemy is out here drinking. What had to happen was a system to bring the water from outside town to inside. This system is very complicated, but the first part at least is a tunnel to bring the water from here straight into the mountain where the people could reach it down a shaft. Later on, in the year 721 BC, under threat from the Assyrians, King Hezekiah made a tunnel which was to bring the water from here, the Gihon outside Jerusalem, to the pool of Siloam, which was inside Jerusalem. This tunnel, which is one of the extraordinary engineering feats of antiquity, this tunnel is the water system of Jerusalem through which we are now walking. And as we walk through it, we see the signs
of the men, their axes and chisels as they cut it. We see how they came to a place and they made a mistake. They went in too far this way. And so they changed direction. And here, they're still cutting, but they've made another mistake. And they correct a bit more to the right. And a third. And here, at this point, we find that the second crew, the crew which was coming from the other end, got as far as here. One side heard the other side. The marks of the axe go ahead of us. The marks of the axe go against us. We're standing exactly at the point where the two crews met. The tunnel brought the water from the Gihon Spring, 1,750 feet long, and it came to a pool which they called the Siloam. The Siloam pool, where we're now sitting, was inside the city walls of Jerusalem, and the New Testament knew about it. I don't think they knew that it was the end of a tunnel, but they knew about the pool because a miracle of Jesus took place here. The pool of Siloam, with this incredible quantity of water, up to 40,000 cubic feet a day, inside the walls of Jerusalem, represents the end of Hezekiah's system. And by all accounts, the system is one of the extraordinary engineering accomplishments of antiquity.
That's from Hello Jerusalem, a show that is on hundreds of cable cities and all over the country, really. Walter, you will be traveling all over the country now for a lecture series. And as you go, I know you're going to hear one question over and over again, particularly since you're a tour guide. They're going to say, Walter, is it safe to come to Israel now? And what is your response?
That's a difficult question because safe is a feeling. Safe is not a fact. Safe is how you feel. And when I came to New York, which is where I'm living, the Israelis said, oh my God, it's not safe. And they may be right. And I know people who didn't go to London because it wasn't safe. And
but
so,
in fact, but tourism is down.
No, tourism is definitely down because the perception is that the Mediterranean, especially in Israel in particular, is a dangerous place. Now, that perception is a real perception. The facts are, of course, completely different. When you look at numbers of incidents or something, or things that happen to people, and try to calculate in some rational way your chances of being a victim of random violence, then Israel Israel is very, very secure. Okay. But it doesn't matter what the truth is. It matters what the perception is. And it needs, I once had somebody who canceled a trip because Iran went to war with Iraq. Now, that was 7 years ago and 1,500 or 2,000 miles away. But the perception is that the Middle East is one place, and sort of anything that happens within a radius of some thousands of square miles immediately affects the hotel in which you're staying. But tourism is definitely down, and it's a real problem.
You think it's a problem that will be changing soon as will people's perceptions change?
Since the fear is an emotion, emotions don't last long, and it'll pass.
Okay.
It may come back again, as it has before, but I believe it'll pass. In my own experience, my own calendar is busy from the end of December, from Hanukkah, Christmas time.
Okay.
Now, if that continues, then we're okay. But it's not just us. It's the whole. It's Egypt and Jordan, Greece,
sure,
and France, and even England.
Okay. I'm sure that part of your answer to them must be, though, that things you can see in Israel and experiences you can have that you simply can't see in other parts of the world. They would have to abandon all of that if they gave up on going.
I'm not sure that that's an encouraging answer. I mean, I wouldn't... It's true, of course. I mean, it's the experience of coming to Israel, and it's not just things you can see. Remember that for most of the population of the Western world, for Jew and Christian and Muslim, Israel is where it all started. And so if you're going from, Hebron to Beersheba to Jerusalem to Shiloh is not just going in 4 different places. These are places which every Jew and every Christian and every Muslim has been living with since he was 5 years old. So it's not just what to see. It's the whole fact of being in the land of Israel, which is for pilgrims of all kinds, which is crucial to their whole existence. Now, if people are put off by fear of violence,
Right.
violence, which is the besetting vice of the 20th century, I suppose, they'll get over it, and the tide will change, and
Okay.
people will feel easier about it, and the pull to come, because there's an enormous pull to go to a place like Israel.
Oh, absolutely. You know, when you talk about violence, Israel has been this sort of international hot seat literally since time began. In fact, I know that's something that you lecture on now, that Israel has always been the focus, the Mideast.
It's geography. It's geography.
What about
the
geography?
It may also be providence, but it's certainly geography. A simple map of the world, that's Africa, and that's Asia, and that's Europe. Right, that's
How do you like the visuals on this
How do
show?
you like the visuals? If you're going from Asia to Africa, if you're driving from Germany to Libya, if you're going from Arabia to the Mediterranean, you've got to go through the land of Israel. It's the bridge, or the tunnel actually is a better word, because it's got a sea on one side and the desert on the other. And the only way you can get from Africa to Mesopotamia, the only way you can get from anywhere to anywhere in the Middle East is to go right through the middle of the land of Israel. And therefore, it's a place whose geography has always invited violence.
But here you speak of a physical bridge. It's also a spiritual bridge in the sense of bringing together, it's the focal point of several great religions.
Well, I think one has to do with the other. Because it's the place where Egypt met Greece, where both met Mesopotamia, because it's the place where the great cultures of the ancient world met. And the reason it's the place where they met is because it's literally the place where the roads all joined. So because of that, it's been the synthesizer of philosophy and religion, and it's been the creative force far beyond its size. Its size is the size of New Jersey. So far beyond its physical size or resources, which are non-existent, its position has made it
The focus.
The focus.
I know your intention, as I understand it, someday is to write the definitive guidebook of this area, just probably for the reasons that you're speaking of now. How will the Walter Zangler guidebook be different than all those that currently exist?
Well, for one thing, it won't be alphabetical. I mean, if you put Bethlehem under B and Hebron under H, which is a convenient way to do it, I propose to write a book which says what happens when you drive from Bethlehem to Hebron.
What happens emotionally?
What happens to the mountains? What happens to the scenery? When is it getting hot? When is it getting cold? When is it getting high or low? And what does this change in geography and in what's growing? What does this change due to the geography and to the history of the place?
What about some of the misconceptions you would hope to correct?
Well, it's very, very complicated to study the history of the land. You can imagine that in 10,000 years of history, there's a lot of stuff which one just doesn't know. And there are a lot of ancient mistakes which are repeated casually by people who can't.
For instance, what are some of the
I
mistakes?
believe that most people in the world believe that the Western Wall, the Wailing Wall,
Yes.
is part of the temple.
I believe that.
It's
Wrong.
not, sorry.
Really?
It's not. It's not part of the temple. The temple was there for 1,000 years before the Western Wall was built, or very nearly 900 years. What it is a part of the platform which King Herod the Great built in the 1st century before the Common Era, part of the platform walls which he built to surround the temple itself. Now, that's not is it a big mistake? I don't know, but it's a mistake. And there's hundreds of things like that. People take things for granted, and they take it for granted that Suleiman the Magnificent built the walls around the old city in 1538, because that's what it says on Jaffa Gate, and that big inscription. But did he really? If so, why is there a 13th century logo, the two lions right next to Lion's Gate? Is it possible that the Turkish Sultan put in somebody else's logo? Not likely. That doesn't happen. So there's problems, and I'm trying to get, in an easy way, I'm trying to get to the bottom of things, and trying to make it accurate, and trying to make it complete, and trying to make it critical. Because a land like Israel, not everything is so sensational, and there are things which are shabby and things which are unconvincing, and somebody should say that. And there are traditions which are unconvincing. I mean, some traditions, Jewish and Christian, date back early years.
What do you mean unconvincing?
A tradition which you first hear about, to use a Christian example, a tradition which
it's going to need to be a short example.
A tradition of where John the Baptist was born.
Okay.
Wait, that's the village in which I live. That's Ain Karim.
Ah.
Its first example is late.
It may be late, but we're late too, Walter. I want to thank you very much for coming. I want to thank all of you for being here today with Walter Zangler, and you'll hear the rest of Walter's stories about Israel. Perhaps read his guidebook when you go to Israel. Thank you very much.